I suppose it's time now to start, even if some part of the audience is late. So I have to chair this session because Mr. Peter Andy, who was expected to chair the session, is obliged to stay in London because he's a member of Transport for London, and he is under the threats of a big budget cut. About 20%. So it's clear that they have to stay in London. So I am pleased to chair this session with a very interesting topic about seamless passenger travel, mainly urban passenger travel, but not only urban passenger travel. And it's clear that the idea of seamless transport is not a new idea. We already have had a lot of promise about the result, the potential of seamless transport. So the main question is there something new about that? Is it possible now to cross the borders, the old barriers to seamless transport? And to address this issue, we have a lot of very performance members in the panel, and as you can see just on the screen, you have people from new partner in the field of seamless transport, people from Cisco, people from Google, and perhaps it is the way to change the deal about seamless transport. And we have also people from more from operating side, from Seoul and from Paris. And we have also people more from public authority and local authority, and how to limit some other barriers about the border between public and private and so on. So what I propose is to start with a first presentation of the first speaker, Florence Dis. She is from Google France. And my first question to Florence Dis is, what do Google is doing in a transport forum? Are you sure to be in the right place? Excuse me. You have to take the microphone. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. So yes, I am happy to be here, even though you may be wondering what I am doing here. So let me try and answer this question. Who here knows Google Maps? Perhaps you can just raise your hands. Okay, that's pretty promising. Some people don't, but I would say that the majority of the audience does. At Google, we're confronted with a very interesting situation. Around 25% of all searches on Google are local. And that's huge, which means that for us it was extremely important and very useful to offer a map, a geographical representation of search. And in doing so, we were inevitably confronted with the topic of mobility. So, yes, absolutely. It's all about Google Maps and Google mobility, if you will. We call it Google Transit. We also call it Google Traffic. It's just an integration of different types of transportation data to allow users to make the proper decisions in how they wish to move around.
But is it enough, from your point of view, to gather a lot of data? Is it enough to have information to improve the passenger transport? Is it enough?
Is information enough? Well, it's definitely essential. Probably not sufficient. So at Google, we have a very large mission statement that I'm going to give you now. And you might be a bit baffled by how broad it is. It's to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And I think that's partially the answer to your question. Accessible is one thing, useful is another. And the response to your question really is in the detail. Having too much information kills the utility of that information. Nevertheless, at Google, as I mentioned, we did develop Google Maps, and we came across a very interesting situation. When you create a map, the first thing you have when you work with partners such as Navteq, TelAtlas, these are big mapping providers out there, you receive perfect information on traffic. That means anybody who wants to know how to get from one point to the other knows immediately how to do that with the car. And this type of information is extremely well organized. When it comes to alternatives, such as walking, public transportation, there is a complete lack of information or transparency. So we actually created Google Maps and Google Transit to try to address that problem and to offer alternatives to our users. The project Transit started off, it was led by an engineer in the US quite a few years back who decided that it was actually scandalous not to be able to have alternatives when using a map, not just our map, any map. And so he started Transit in the USA, and it was a big success. Interestingly enough, it's been different in Europe. So we've been confronted with a major problem, and that is definitely access to the information, which is why I say that information is essential, and yes, we do want to have access to it, but there is a huge cultural barrier about sharing information with people such as Google, and we are very aware of that. We do think, however, that it's information that has no value if it's not visible. So who here has actually used Google Transit? Does this ring a bell to anybody who's used Maps before? I see a few hands going up. So the problem for Google Transit, basically you'll see, if you use Google Maps, you'll find that we try and represent the information in a very easy manner so that a user gets to the solution that he needs. And what we try and do is we try and work with different transport operators to integrate the information in such a way that they can find a transit station, line information, and even schedule information. That means you've just left your meeting, you don't know the network particularly well, you look at the nearest transit station, and you find that your bus is leaving in 10 minutes. That's the logic behind integrating public transportation on a map. Access to the information is very difficult. When we do actually have access, we've had a lot of successes in certain European countries. We've just launched Denmark, the entire country, yesterday, in fact. So that's a very good news. So Spain has been very successful. Italy has been very successful. Switzerland and Austria. And we're starting to see momentum pick up in the different European countries. But what's interesting to see is once we do overcome the barrier of access to the data, the real challenge is how do you bring it across to users so it becomes useful? And that's where Google plays a good role because we are engineers at heart. And so we come up with innovative ways of how to make that data more visible. So, for example, on Maps, you'll have something called place pages. You'll look for a hotel, the opera, the theater, and when you actually find that location, since a few months now, you'll find the nearest transit station. So that's just a little reminder to anybody using the map to say, look, it's really simple. You don't need to take the car. You can actually take another mode of transport. Obviously, if people wish to take the car, there are other types of information that we integrate as well, such as real-time traffic information and so forth. The idea is really to offer, as we say, a seamless approach to passenger information, whether it's traffic, transit, biking, walking, you name it. So that is the idea. In terms of access, I want to mention one last point. Not everybody knows about Google Maps. And the real challenge, and I think this is a challenge for all of us, information has to be accessible and useful in any format, whether it's over the mobile, whether it's over internet, whether it's in physical structures. The challenge, though, is to actually present that information whenever that user needs it. So one thing that we've been trying to do at Google is we've created the concept of universal search, which means that now if you do a classic Google search for a location, you'll find a little map appears. And often, if it's about a location, you'll also find that transit station. For us, that's extremely important. It's taking the information we have and really making it even more visible than it was before. And that's where we start getting to things such as the usefulness of data.
Okay, thank you very much for this first insight. It's clear that to overcome the barrier between the public transit and roads, it's not very easy to cross the barriers, and some barriers are still very important. The second speaker will be Dominique Laus from RATP, an old French company. What what's your opinion about this new partner?
I understand what Florence says, that we are a very old company because we have 5 centuries of history. Because the RTP has been created in 1949, but it was, public transport has been invented by philosopher Pascal in the 17th century. So we know a little bit about public service. But
very old.
To be a little bit provocative, that Google Transit, Tripler, we have seen this in 2005 exactly. And it was not so impressive. It was impressive because it was Google. But the function, the quality of the product was not so impressive for people from transport, for all sectors of transport. But now it's evolving. So now I think that you have many engineers who can work on that stuff, and now it's much better. But in 2005, it was something for transport engineers. They say we can do the same thing, but now it's not the same. Not the same process. Now we are in a process where we are working like an arsenal. In transport, in public transport, perhaps we are trying to work by ourselves, and now we need others. We need to work with others to develop new product, more precise and more dedicated to help real passengers. But now I want to speak. Thank you very much. And when I've prepared my 2 slides, I didn't know that you will speak about useful mobility. For us, useful mobility it's the same thing as you had, with one thing more. Useful mobility is optimized mobility. We think that with information we can gain 10 or 15% of passengers of journeys a day. It's possible. Make the same program of activities, but with more precise, more detailed travel. So, saying so, we have worked a lot in prospective team to develop a new view of what passengers want. So, because for us, seamless is not only physical, it's cognitive. Seamless is also cognitive abilities, cognitive problem. How do you understand travel you can do a day? So, for that, your work or your web, you see, tools have to meet five changes in what people wants to have a meaningful mobility. These things are first, time shift, a problem of coherence of your program of activities. Secondly, from spaces to places. In a city now, you are more on a view of spaces as on a geographical way. Now we think that places, hubs of transport are more important than other places. Third one, hyperurban cities, is to say that now evolution of cities are pulled by new technologies. Fourth, public health and body concern is more important for people. So they want not promiscuity in public transport. We have a problem with that. If we have information about travels, we need to help them to find a way to have a more attractive, more pleasure in their way to move. And fifth, environmental concern. This to say that now people are aware of we can't go on the same way to travel. And secondly, innovation in transport for us could be in seamlessness, could be first. We need, like Bertrand Piccard said this morning, it was very impressive in his words, we need a more structured theory of innovative design, something to innovate differently with different people, not only with public transport, not only with private transport, but with web actors and many other actors. I propose you the CK theory, which is a theory which has gained last summer the outstanding award of the World Design Society. We work with them in the Mining School of Paris. This to say that now innovation is more in concept and not in knowledge. It's in a new view of mobility. Secondly, for that, we can develop transport not only as a way for seamless mobility, but for for developing new ways to think about mobility, to develop platform for innovation, not only for to develop new services to mobility, but new services for all the city. In that, transport could gain or could develop a new business model to gain more money to develop itself. And last, and I finished, in that I don't develop the scheme, I have not the time. We have to break the economic rules, the existing economic rules. It's not possible to continue to go on with the same economic rules where it's only for public transport in public subsidies, and for private to say only, it's not only a problem of sharing data. It's a problem of, if we give you the data, what will be the return of investment for us? Because if all the things which have added values is for the private sector, how can we develop public transport and all public staffs? The problem will be like that.
And when you speak about breaking the economic rules, that is to say, to break the bargaining power of trade unions?
Perhaps, yes, because we're very healthy, we have these problems, I know. But you see, generation are changing. And we are at crossroad now. We are, the old world is not finished. But it's on the way of reducing.
Excuse me, but what about the idea to open competition within Paris transport system?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not. I don't know. But I think so. One day it will be like that. I think so. But I don't know when.
Okay, we hope so. Thank you. So we have now a third presentation from Korea, from our colleague from Seoul, in charge of traffic management and very new organization in Seoul. So you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm Chang Kim from Seoul, Korea. I'm from Seoul City Government. Let me briefly mention about BMS. Seoul City of Seoul has selected to provide the seamless service to citizens, the bus, and we built a BMS system and BIS system to provide the bus real-time information. And we spend a lot of money and effort to make it stable last 6 years. Now it's very efficiently operating. There are about 10,000 buses operating in Seoul. It's at the same time. I mean, the 10,000 buses means operating at the same time. It was not easy due to the traffic jam, and the information accuracy is about now higher than 95%. We provide the information through BIT, which is a bus information terminal installed at station, and ARS and mobile internet. The number of people use the BMS information increase day by day. Due to the reliable bus information, the number of people using the bus is increasing year by year. Now, the car ownership is increasing every day in Seoul, and the number of bus user is increasing also. Imagine this. The people buy the car, but they don't use the car because of the better service in Seoul bus system. Now I'm going to talk about the new innovation in Seoul. Last year we developed some PTA system with Cisco. We're going to provide some right to choose which modes we have to take. We're going to give you the better solution to take modes, transportation modes. nowadays we are. I'm integrate bus information with subway information for the transit passenger, and in order to collect. Actually, I'm going to extend our service to the taxi and the private car and parking and bicycle and walk. I'm going to give us, there are 4 types of information on transportation modes: transit, passenger car, and bicycle, walk. If you find out the better way based on the time and the emission, carbon emission, you can choose whatever any kind of transportation modes. And now there are about 62% of using the transit modes. I believe it's going to be up to the 70%, which means we have to catch up the 2 rabbits. One rabbit is to reduce the traffic congestion. The other one is to improve the transit services. In order to catch up to 2 rabbits, and I need to improve our PTA information. If I give the better information to the citizen, they're going to use the more transit. Then the traffic congestion will be reduced, and then I can catch up the 2 rabbits. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the very interesting kind of hunting and two rabbits in the same time. But what is very interesting is your capability to merge the two sectors, the road sector and the bus sector. But my idea is, do you think that your proposal is a way to finally avoid the setting up of a congestion charge? Perhaps, do you think that because of the success of your system, you were able to reduce road congestion, and then it is a substitute to the congestion charge, like in Singapore or in London?
This very difficult problems. There is a lot of resistance to pay the congestion price, usually in Korea, and then maybe based on the information I provide, maybe you can charge some pricing for the people getting into the CBD, and then maybe it might be possible, but I think it's not easy. But we plan to implement some congestion pricing based on our information provided.
So I am not sure to well understand, but if I am a user of public transit, and if I am among the 62% of users, it's mainly with my phone, with my cell phone. I have the information, and I have also the information about carbon emission of the mode I am choosing.
I think there's another problem. We are planning to get some institution providing the carbon mileage. If you use the transit more, you can getting the money, and then instead in the other hand, you can use the private car more, and you have to pay the congestion price. Maybe if we get the transit mode sharing percentage is about 70%, we can implement that policy maybe.
Okay, so we will give floor to the audience. Perhaps I have just one question more about Seoul. What is from an institutional point of view? How did you manage the relationship between the public transit operator and the road operator? It is the same operator or not? How do you obtain all the information from the road sector and from the public transit? No problem in Korea with that?
Yeah, actually, we call this a semi-transit, semi-bus system. We provide him, the subsidy to the company. We have about 70 bus company, and we can control by providing our subsidies, financial aid. That's the reason we can, control, we can manage the operation and operation of the bus.
So perhaps it's more simpler with 70 bus company than with only one company in Paris. But it's just a private joke. So some question from the audience. Yes, please. And then a second one. Yes, we start with you. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Henry Posner. I'm chairman of the Iowa Interstate Railroad in the USA, which is a freight railroad. But we're getting into the passenger business in Germany, which is why I'm here as opposed to the other session. I am a user of mass transit and find that the single biggest barrier for my using transit systems is not necessarily finding out when it's running, but actually paying for it. If you get off a train in Paris, you will spend 10 minutes standing in line to buy metro tickets. If you want to ride a bus in the USA, you need exact change. Picking up on the Google idea of segmenting out users of transit as people who can be specially served by special websites. My question is there a business opportunity at the global level for either the private sector or the public sector to come up with some sort of a way of paying regardless of where you are? In other words, an affinity card for transit users so that the system can be made user-friendly for people who don't live in that exact city. So that's a question for everybody because we've got a mix of private and public sector people here.
Okay, I propose to keep the question and then to have a first wave of, for instance, 3 questions. Yes?
Yes, I'm Bruno Gaurier from the European Disability Forum. I was most interested by those communications. I have only one question. I think that up to now, Internet and new technologies of information are quite one of the issues of exclusion of people who don't have real access to those new communication means. And they are to be about 10% of the passengers in the few coming years, elderly, but also those who are blind, those who are deaf, like me, for instance, who have no cell phones, modern cell phones, just because they have hearing aids, and so on and so on. So what are the means you could introduce to make, for instance, Google fully accessible to those new technologies, for instance, Braille and so on?
Thank you. So we will address this issue of accessibility for everyone, including disabled people and some others. A third question, no? Yes? Tony May, the rear.
Thank you. Tony May, University of Leeds, England. I wanted to come back to your joke, Yves, and the question of seamless management, because I think we understand what a seamless passenger travel system ought to look like. But if we have the public sector determining the policy and one in Paris or 70 in sole operators in the private sector, how do we bring them together effectively to appreciate the need for seamless management and to make seamless decisions?
Okay, thank you. I think that seamless management will be addressed by some other speakers. But perhaps you have some answer? Yes? Yes, okay. First one, sir, and then Dominique, and then Florence. Yes, it will be working.
I'm Pat Jacobson. Is it on?
Yeah.
Yes. From former CEO of TransLink in Vancouver, which is a mid-sized city. And the 2 comments that I'd make is on the first and the third question. On the first question, there are systems now, and in fact in Vancouver will be introduced probably within 2 years, where you actually buy a slice of time, that it's seamless, and you use it not only for transit accessibility, you use it for toll roads in the community, and you use it for your parking. And so there's, in fact, tremendous systems for seamless movement that are much easier to understand, much easier to order in terms of newcomers, people who have more challenges. So that the technology exists out there. I think that I'll link it to the third question, which is the management structures. I think as long as you have a multitude of structures and you're trying to knit back those structures to try to introduce those kinds of integrating tools, it makes it more complex. And when it comes to my comments, I'm going to talk a fair amount about integrated management.
Okay. Dominique?
Yes. I think that the first and the third question have a common basis, because there is, in our view in RTP, there is no. It's not easy to have a profitable system only in transport. We need to enlarge it to other functions of city, like Pat Jacobson said, to toll and to many other things, and to pay for many things. Only for transport it could be difficult. But common basis is about cognitive abilities of some of our people. Our statistics, our data is 30% of the population, adult population, can't take transport because they don't understand basic instruction. But I agree with that, and I give you the data. But for us, new technologies are useful to develop possibilities for these people to take transport. On the contrary, as you say, 60% of elder people have a mobile phone, actually, and it's growing. So we think that it's not a problem of the object. The problem is to develop, softwares and things like that, applications dedicated for those people. And we have tried. We have a very small early works, which is quite R&D work. We are calling it pedagogy of mobility. These are mobility workshops to help people to develop a new sense, a new ability, new cognitive abilities to use basic needs in transport. To take a ticket when you have an automat, it's always complicated. To read a map, to know what directions, navigation, orientation, and things like that. So we think that new technologies, new medias could be included if we design them the right way. For the moment, it's not easy, but we think that it could be something that will develop very, very fast.
Okay, thanks. Florence, do you have some idea?
So I'd like to make a comment to all three of the questions asked. On the issue of fares, yes, it's a catastrophe, at least for novices such as Google, trying to tackle this whole chunk of information that is still missing for our users. We were quite naive when we started with Google Transit, and in our specifications, we always had an area where fare prices could be specified. And it did actually happen. One of our first partners, Portland, did communicate fare prices. And so we were very pleased about that. And then we continued along this vein, and then we hit Europe. And whenever we get into fare discussions, it's an absolute abomination, and we don't go down that route. We say it's possible technically, but given the complexity of fare structures with most of the partners that we work with, what we do is we remain in this role of being a search engine that redirects towards the source of information. So unfortunately, we are not there yet with a seamless fare structure. I think that's a role that Google will not want to play. We're already relatively contentious. If we came up with something like that, I'm pretty certain we would get into big trouble. So we'll see how we can work with partners, see how we can simplify this kind of thing, but it's something that we hope to reflect in the future, but not yet. Regarding the second question about access to data for people that do have disabilities, again, Google does come from an online world. We are convinced that everybody has an internet connection, which is, sometimes we are surprised by this, not the case. So we have tried to take steps. First step is to try and give everybody access to the internet. That's true. So, for example, you'll see several different initiatives to increase the speed of internet, to allow coverage. We have big projects in Africa to allow access to internet. And obviously that's also in our interest because people search more over Google. That said, we have finally realized that not everybody wants internet all the time and that sometimes you need to have things offline. So we're not terribly good yet, but we are making progress on offline. And most applications that exist today also have an offline mode. So that's useful to some extent. That does not tackle some of the people who do have disabilities, hearing impairments, visual difficulties. And what we try and do there is we try and this deviates a little bit from the public transportation question, but we try and offer solutions that are either visually easier to look at or, and I don't know if some of you have tested these solutions, voice-enabled search, where you are actually able to speak to your phone. I don't know if anybody has access to an Android phone. But more and more, all the different smartphones are building these applications where you can speak and have that recognized and have a solution presented. Now, that is full of pitfalls. If anybody tries the system, I tried it. With my American accent, it works well. If I use my French accent, it doesn't work at all. So I think we have some progress to make yet, but at least there is a recognition that we have to tackle a larger group of users. As for the third question, which ties into the first one, my feeling, my belief is that there are actors such as Google who, in their naive approach to saying, my goodness, we should have public transportation as an alternative to cars on maps, it's all good and it works very well as long as there's a willingness from our partners to innovate, but policy and governments can play a huge role in improving the communication between different operators. And we see it. There are some countries that are much more innovative in their approach to sharing information, in their approach to setting standards. One thing that we hit our heads against the wall on are formats and standards to share data. And I go to France and everybody tells me, why aren't you using Trident? And then I go to Germany and everybody tells me, oh, you should use the MDV formats. It's awful. We try and participate in forums where there will theoretically be the development of a unified standard in EMEA, but I don't think we're there yet. So policy has a very, very important role to play in how that communication happens.
So thank you. It's clear that the second part of this session will be about policy. So first, I understand that I have to change my French accent. It will be difficult. So you mentioned the speed of internet. Speed of internet, it is the job of Cisco. And Mr. Brubaker is from Cisco and also aware of a lot of transport issues. So you have the floor.
Yeah, can you pass me the...
Yes, excuse me.
Thank you. Sorry about that. You mentioned the speed of internet and internet itself, and what was interesting to me when we were talking about the Android phone, that's all fine and good until you go down underground into a subway station where there's no connectivity and try to use it. And that's part of the theme that I'm going to get at my presentation here. I got real jealous during the middle of the presentations earlier when we were talking about the personal travel assistant and some of the other things, and folks had slides. So I prepared these, but I wasn't going to use them, but I just got so jealous. I thought I'd talk about this. So I just want to talk about a couple of things that get us on the road to seamless transportation, because it's important to understand what's impacting seamless transportation and transportation generally in urban environments. Stakeholders, as we move toward urbanization, where you got 2/3 of all the global population living in urban areas by 2050, this is a big thing. People have got to be able to get around. Their workspaces have got to be connected, and they've got to have reliable, user-friendly transport modes going forward. Security and safety, we just saw the incident in Times Square, but if you look at public transit, whether it's in London or Madrid or Moscow, we all understand the vulnerabilities that exist in the transport system, particularly in urban environments. The revenue model's broken. You heard at this morning's session, everybody talking about the fact that the systems are broke. In fact, our moderator, the moderator we were supposed to have isn't here today because he works for Transport Limited and he's going through a round of budget cuts thanks to the new government. We are cash starved. We've got to come up with new ways of operating, new business models, and new sources of revenue for the systems in order for us to be able to successfully address expansion, which urbanization is going to drive us towards, and the ability to have to meet our O&M requirements. Now, I laid out 3 business cases, and the issue there's a disruptive trend that's occurring right now, which we call the Internet of Things, where everything essentially is able to have a addressable space, an Internet address. So we're really about just running transportation on networked information, being able, as we move to the Internet of Things, being able to access data that is riding on the Internet. And the problem that we've got right now is mostly a legacy issue. It's that data and networks that serve the transportation mode have been built in stovepipes, or as we call them in Washington, D.C., silos of excellence, and we can't access that data across the various networks. So we're sub-optimizing in 4 key areas that are critical to the operations of transportation in urban environments. We're not realizing the services that are enabled through technology. So what we at Cisco are advocating is a single transportation network architecture that enables us to access all this rich data that is necessary for companies like Google to build applications on. They need access to the data. And it's about getting the right data to the right people in the right format at the right time. In other words, making data actionable across the various stovepipes. And as you look at these four buckets right here that I've got laid out, most transit systems, for example, and just focusing on transit here for a second, but it's true of the airlines, it's true of all the modes of transportation, are usually stovepiped themselves in these areas, and they tend to build individual networks. In some cases, I just ran into a system in a big metropolitan area that doesn't even own their own security or their own security network. What we're talking about is coming up with a unified structure that will enable things like smart travel stations, where you can pull in rich data sources from tell you exactly how the transport system's operating, whether it's public transit, whether it's trains, whether it's light rail, whether it's buses, whether it's taxi cabs, and allow you to summon those things on an as-needed basis, or at least let folks know that you're in the area and that you're demanding some things. There's something else that we're developing called a virtual station agent, where you can go and access a human on the other end who are centrally located of a station, or even outside a station, to ask them to give you in-person advice on how you should travel. The other thing that we're doing is we're working on some technology, some translation technology, which is not that difficult, frankly, so that we can provide riders with information in the format that they need, whether it's an accessibility issue or whether it's a foreign language issue or whatever it may be, so that we can begin to better serve the traveling public. Because one of the issues that we have in getting people from origin to destination is the ability to communicate effectively where the routes are, who's doing what's the performance of the system, are there alternative routes that we should take. Now, getting back to the seamless issue, because that's the issue du jour here, and that's really the thing we want to tackle, is most of the modes have grown up, again, in those silos of excellence, and modes are entities unto themselves, whether it's transit, whether it's bus, whatever it may be, whether it's the individual automobile. And what we're suggesting is that we build systems so that they're open and interoperable and ride a common platform, and that the data is accessible to everyone on a converged IP network, Internet Protocol network. And the reason we want to do this is because we need that holistic view of the condition and well-being of that underlying or overlying, if you will, transport network, whether it's movement of people or whether it's movement of freight. We have to have that holistic view and collect the data on the performance so that we can better manage it, respond to choke points and congestion issues, so that we can do workarounds from a holistic multimodal perspective, and see that we can enhance that customer experience. Because I would submit one of the reasons why folks aren't necessarily using public transit as much as and other modes in the most efficient and effective way is because they don't know what the most efficient and effective way is, number one. And number two, they don't have the data in an accessible and actionable way when they need it. And we're at Cisco, we are taking that on as a significant challenge. And we've done things like, for example, in Seoul, where we've worked with the government to create this personal travel assistant, which is simply an internet app that allows you to pick from origin to destination, and it basically allows you to plan your travel. Now, what would be really great would be to get at some of these questions that were asked, like, for example, the unified payment system, where I can pay one fare or know what that fare is from origin to destination, and no matter what mode of travel I'm using, it is paying my tolls, it's paying my fares, it's paying for my tickets, and I could feel free to move about the system and be charged accordingly. And if you've ever, and by the way, this isn't a technical issue, this is a cultural issue in terms of government and public policy. And we've got to change the public policy, and we've got to drive the culture to accept some innovation into the system that would allow us to do this. Because if you've ever taken a cab, for example, from LaGuardia Airport down to a hotel in Manhattan, you know that when that cab begins to use a toll, that you are going to get charged that on top of your fare. This is not, from a technical perspective, this isn't a wickedly evil, difficult problem to surmount, but it is a cultural problem. We were talking about the fare structures and the things that we run into when we talk to the bureaucracy about overcoming these barriers to change. And I've got a little experience. I've spent about 16 years in the bureaucracy, so I'm very familiar with how it operates and what those obstacles to change are. And I would submit that there's innovation on two fronts that we've really got to tackle here. One is the innovation from a technical perspective, and two is the innovation from a cultural, public policy perspective that will allow us to drive innovation into the system, be it from industry or be it from great minds that are in government that have really considered and thought about these problems and have solutions.
Okay, so thank you for Paul. But I have a question about the cost of that such a system, because is it not very, very costly to implement such a system, and who will pay? The customer, the state, Cisco?
So here's what's interesting. What's interesting is what we don't know from a data perspective. The current cost of the existing system, if we were to add it up, if we had the visibility into it, you'd be shocked, and you'd say that's absolutely ridiculous that we're paying that much money for redundant networks. And in fact, there's savings to be had through the consolidation of networks from strictly an O&M perspective, from an improvement in business models. So, I'll give you an example that we deployed at Yankee Stadium, for example. We built an advertising system for Yankee Stadium that paid for itself through revenue. If you look at some of the things that we can do with a converged network, a singular network that would serve a community, there are new revenue models that can be generated through real-time advertising that could pay for itself, help pay for that network. The other piece of that is you're replacing old, cumbersome, redundant networks that use a lot of electricity, use a lot of equipment that needs replaced, and frankly, we can't afford the O&M on these existing networks. And what we need to do is we need to seriously consider how do we rip and replace and come up with some innovative financing mechanisms to replace these old, antiquated networks that churn a lot of electricity and do not move ones and zeros in a most efficient or effective manner.
Okay, thank you. So thank you. I have now to give the floor to Rita perhaps to address some policy issues.
Yes, well, several of the panelists and some of the participants have spoken of the issue of a policy foundation for a lot of these seamless passenger travel initiatives. And that's what we're trying to do now at the U.S. Department of Transportation, is to lay a solid policy foundation that we call the innovative passenger travel, the seamless passenger travel initiative. And that's an initiative through livable communities, livable and sustainable communities. And that's an initiative that seeks to provide alternatives to the automobile and to give citizens the ability to use public transportation in an affordable and an effective manner. I say alternatives to the automobile instead of replacing the automobile because I don't think that that's a tenable goal. In the United States, 50% of the communities have no viable public transportation, so there's no alternative to the automobile. But there are, ways in which the automobile can be combined with public transportation alternatives. And there are also large sectors of our population that simply can't use the automobile. You know, we have a large disabled population in the United States. About 15% of our population is disabled. We have a growing elderly population, and if people live long enough, they won't be able to drive. So all of these people are going to need mobility. And the Livable Communities Initiative is a way of providing them with these alternatives. It was actually the President Obama who outlined the need for the initiative when he said that for many years federal policy has promoted new models that will not provide the types of innovative and seamless transportation that we need in order to grow our economies and give people the viable alternatives that they need for mobility and accessibility. Secretary LaHood picked up on this in the Livable Communities Initiative, and I think that he summarizes it in a very descriptive and a very effective way by saying that if you don't have a car, you don't need one to get around, to go to work, to go to school, to go about your daily life, and to do anything that people need to do in the ordinary course of business. And the Livable Communities Initiative is based on a sound public policy foundation that includes that gives a very strong role to government. The Secretary started off by forming a partnership between the Department of Transportation, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and also the Environmental Protection Agency, so that they coordinate on transportation programs and housing projects so that housing is located near public transportation, and there's no need for citizens necessarily to use a car. They can walk to work, they can walk to school, and the environmental aspects of the projects are also taken into consideration. We've talked about the technology here today, and that's a major aspect of the Livable Communities Initiative. There's an emphasis on the type of smart cards technology that was evoked earlier. A regional system of smart cards, a fare collection, and a passenger can use a smart card on a train, on a bus, on for highway use, for instance, for a toll road, for ferries, so that all of this facilitates and makes life easier. It makes it allows people to use public transportation in a way that is less expensive, more affordable, and more efficient, and will encourage them to use public transportation. We talked about the passenger information system, and which makes transportation more reliable. So all of these factors taken together have created projects that I think in the United States that we can look to as models for what we want to replicate in our country. For instance, in a place like Arlington, Virginia, where you have dense development around public transportation infrastructure, 50% of the population uses public transportation, whereas in the United States as a whole, maybe about 5% of the population uses public transportation. In some place like San Francisco, in the Trans-Bay Terminal, which is now under construction, this is a project that's being jointly developed by the public and private sector, and it includes mixed-use development in which there are opportunities for business development as well as housing development so that people can live and work in the same community. and also go about any other type of recreational activity, go to medical appointments, and do anything that they need to do within the same radius. In the United States, one of the big impetuses for the Livable Communities Initiative is the fact that the Americans are driving more and more, and congestion is getting to be a huge problem in our urban areas. In the last 30 years, congestion has doubled, so that passengers are spending more and more time, people are spending more and more time in their cars, and spending more and more of their family resources, too, on transportation, most of it on gasoline and costs associated with an automobile. Now I think the average American spends about 19% of family income on transportation. And the farther people are from public transportation, the fewer alternatives they have, the more they tend to spend. So this has a real economic impact. It has an impact in terms of pollution. It has an impact in terms of lost productivity. So by joining government resources, by promoting smart growth and development, and also by trying to accommodate the growing numbers of people in our population who need access to public transportation, who have no viable alternative, I think we're creating a framework in which we have an opportunity to give people a better quality of life, and also meet our environmental goals, and also improve our economy, because it's a huge economic stimulant and a cost saver for most families.
Okay, thank you. Do you agree with me if I said that a livable community is a community with a minimum level of density? Because very often, if we compare density of urban areas in the US and in Europe, the density is very low in the US in comparison with Europe. So what about the alternative to automobile in a low-density area?
Well, I think that we've come to the realization in the United States that maybe most of our areas are too low density. That's why we're trying to increase the amount of high density around public transportation, and also mixed-use development around public transportation infrastructure, because it's more costly, and the further people go out, the sprawl has been one of our problems in the United States. So it's an attempt to overcome the problem of sprawl. Now there's a movement in the United States towards back to the cities. People want to live in more high-density areas. They don't want to drive as much. They don't want to encounter all the congestion and pollution that's engendered by having to live far from their workplaces. So right now, I think this partnership between the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the Department of Transportation has as its focus and gives priority to projects that are more high density.
Okay, thank you. So land use is perhaps the first way to achieve seamless transport.
Yes, land use planning is very, very important. And what we're trying to do there is work with our local metropolitan planning organizations. And I know one of the questioners earlier talked about the fact that you have to work with various levels of government in order to get a lot of these projects done, not only the transportation people, but also the highway people, the local planning people, elected city officials. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do, more and more outreach and more education of the community, and also education of local officials to make them understand how important it is to coordinate these projects. And, funding, just as in any other endeavor, money talks. When we have more projects to fund, especially what we call New Starts projects, which are projects that involve the new rail lines or new forms of guided systems such as bus rapid transit. Priority is given to those communities that come up with best overall metropolitan plan.
So education of local politicians and officials will be probably the most difficult. So Pat Jacobson, perhaps you have some idea about to give a good education to local politicians.
I guess the wrap-up speaker of 6 speakers. I'm going to take us in a little different area. I think there seems to be widespread consensus on the challenge itself in terms of the growing urban cities, the congestion, the environmental imperative. But I'd like to further the animal analogy of Dr. Kim. If he said that we're chasing rabbits, I'd like to say that I'd like to talk about the elephant that's in the room. And the elephant that's in the room is really our structures and the way that we're organized. Much has changed in all of our countries over the last 80 years. And yet, with a few exceptions, we still deliver most of our programs through the same organizational structures. So I'd like to talk a bit about integrated structures, particularly in cities. And I'll use as the city that I'm most familiar with, which is Vancouver, which is a mid-sized city, 2 million people. I know there are also integrated transportation authorities in London, in Dublin, in Seoul. I also know that there are many cities that have gone the route of looking to try to create one, and after several years of discussion, deliberation, have come to the brink and backed off because they're not that easy to do, and it's largely because we all hold on to our own territories. So in a truly integrated transportation authority, in a metro model, it would have 3 levels of integration that we haven't really talked about. The first would be an integration of all modes, and I think this forum is one of the few occasions where both passengers and goods meet in the same forum, and all levels of government and the private sector. So the first is, I say, for a truly integrated and powerful metro transportation authority, you really need to cover all modes. So it's not just about integrating your transit operations. It's about transit, it's about roads, goods movement, managing the trucking routes, and being the entity that serves all of the needs in terms of movement, not a portion of the needs. And those types of agencies are probably fewer than 10 in all of our countries. The second, in terms of integration, is it needs to have the full range in terms of duties. And that starts with the policy and the planning side, and not just the short-term planning side, but the long-term planning side. It also includes the financing and the financial tools, and I'll talk a bit more about that. It includes the development, and it includes the operations. And by operations, I would say that doesn't mean that it has to operate everything. It has to be responsible for the performance of the operation, but I think we also need to have richer mixes between the public and the private sector in terms of the delivery of those services. And you're starting to see some of that, but they're still difficult. They're often with a lack of trust and some difficulties in terms of early days, but I do think that we need to harness the best of both sectors. In terms of financial tools, I think that most urban transportation authorities struggle the most in terms of the finances. Most of our financial structures have remained at senior levels of government and have been largely publicly funded, and yet we need to look to a real variety in terms of financial tools to be able to expand what an urban centre needs. So that is why I also think you need to combine transit and roads. So you need to have structures in terms of road pricing, transit fares, the capacity for the authority to use real estate and the real estate development opportunities that transit brings, and have your local authority benefit from that. And it needs to have some of the transportation fees that are actually generated from the region and go to more senior levels of government, such as gas tax. Just to give you an example in terms of Vancouver, TransLink is about 9 years old. When it started, there was a modal use in terms of transit, walking, and cycling at about 11%. Today, there is, 9 years later, in a small city with a lot of mountains and a lot of water, there is now over 35% that is walking, cycling, and transit, which in a short period of time was a pretty big change in terms of modal shift. Any of you who followed the Olympics, that shift rose to about 70% during the Olympics, and some of the carry-on that is hoped after the Olympics in terms of changes that were made for that period, there's a real hope that they'll continue. The funding for much of that, in terms of that growth, did not come from government funding, although our federal government was most generous in helping in terms of capital. The biggest growth in the funding came from local resources. TransLink has access to parking taxes. It has access to tolls for bridges. The rapid transit line was built as a public-private partnership and actually raised $2 billion in private capital to build a 30-year rapid transit project. So it takes that kind of innovation in terms of finance, and I think to get that kind of innovation, you need an integration at home. So I'll just close by saying, what is it that leads some organizations to lead to these integrated authorities, and where do they fail? And I've watched Toronto try twice to come to that point. Seattle spent 3 years and quite extensive hearings on trying to create an integrated transit authority as distinct from a transportation authority. And I think that there's probably three things at the end of the day that inhibit us from more innovative structures. I think that where it has happened, like Dublin in the last few years, that there's been both political and bureaucratic leadership, because everybody has to give up a piece. They have to give up a piece that goes into another entity. And so where those authorities that have actually been born, there's generally been, on both levels, political and very strong bureaucratic leadership. The second is that there's been a very strong and compelling case in terms of the do-nothing option. Everybody knows the pain of the creation of new entities, but very few people know the pain of the current system. And so articulating scenarios of, if we grow like this over the next 10 years, what will our city be like? If your commute right now is 20 minutes from, in our city, it's Langley to Burnaby, translating that in terms of real time. And the third, I would say, is building coalitions, and particularly coalitions with the business community. If it's something that transportation or transit entities want, it's seen to be something that is self-serving, that is only for a portion of the community. And those authorities that actually have gotten birth and have I think, been quite successful, and successful to me means they have enough money to address the growth required, generally have very, very strong coalitions, and the coalitions of the natural coalitions of the environmental and the transit users, but the unnatural coalitions in terms of the business community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, but it seems to be magic. Did you use a magic wand, or more seriously, what was the leverage, the technical, the institutional leverage to change the habits?
It was actually before I went to TransLink, the year before I went to TransLink, but there was a lot of jokes within Vancouver because it really was a very left-wing provincial politician who was about 5 feet tall, and a very right-wing local government planning politician, George Puel, who was about 5'1". And the two were absolute extremes in terms of political, but they both had a vision and a love for Greater Vancouver and a belief that if they each gave up huge pieces of their own world, they could create something that was better. And they stayed the course through 3 years of quite difficult birthing. When TransLink was born, it had 34% public approval rating, and it was the laughingstock of the media. They recorded everything because it also happened at the same time as the longest transit strike and services being cut. And today, after great ups and downs, I think it ranks, it's polled every year, I think it's ranking in about the high 70s, despite the fact that everybody who lives in Vancouver will tell you they have paid in a variety of ways, from gas tax to property tax to a variety of taxes, but a lot of public education.
So according to you, the political leverage is the most important, and if possible, extremist? No?
I think the political leadership matched with really good bureaucratic leadership really makes the difference in terms of the places where it has actually come to be versus the ones that have studied it and backed away.
Okay, thanks. So we have time now for some questions from the audience. Yes, one here.
Tara Alice from the UK Department for Transport. I was interested if the panelists could comment on what you see as the role of the user, the consumer, in developing more seamless travel, in particular in slightly more real time and in an engaging way. We see in several consumer markets, consumers actually engaging very much with the companies producing the products and actually helping develop them in a way that they want, as opposed to the way maybe engineers or other people like that might want.
Okay. Yes? Yeah. Hey?
I could give a couple of examples from TransLink, and it's in two areas. One is around the financing models. The financing models actually came from a series of public group meetings and surveying. So the actual models that went out to the public were actually driven from, if you have to pay, how do you want to pay? Secondly, the issues in terms of where service was expanded, in terms of particularly transit service, came from both the consumer panels, largely through the internet, which is a program that was launched that's called Talk to TransLink, and it has thousands of people that you wouldn't normally reach in a common survey, giving comments in terms of where were the service problems, and then we would match that with the data that we had in terms of the GPS service on the service itself. But I think if the customer is involved in the creation of the service, you've got a much better chance that they'll also agree how it is paid and what they pay for it.
Thank you. Yes, Paul?
There's another element to this, too, that we see happening, and I'd mentioned the personal travel assistant. That is just one application that's being developed, and this underscores the need for, as we build out these networks and we begin to collect data on the real-time performance of systems, that we make this data available to the public so that folks can see and so that innovators can come up with new applications. In fact, I just read in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was like a week or a week and a half ago, that Jay Walder, the head of MTA in New York City, had convened a group of developers, application developers, to make new data sets available to these application developers to build out new and exciting applications. And I just thought that was really cool. It's another area where innovation sort of paves the path for some neat stuff.
Okay, some other questions? Yes, Yoshi?
Yoshi Hayashi from Nagoya University, Japan. I would like to make some comments, in particular on Seoul system, because that system is, I think, it's quite related to all the discussion points today. Seoul system, partially you have explained. I think it's a very good success because at least 3 points. One is you reformed infrastructure system that is originally to renovate the urban elevated expressway because it is over a nice river. The Cheonggyecheon River was covered by concrete and also covered by motorway. And then to demolish that, the city had to consider totally detour the traffic or how to treat the traffic if the motorway will be demolished. Then you considered, developed a new idea that is subway plus bus reform combinations. And that is one thing. And the second thing is utilize the fully IT. So really the timing of public transport reform was at the peak of your electronic industries, how to say, improvement. That introduced, for example, a bus information system or fare system consistent, and even for the convenience of housewives living in a suburb, coming into the city center for shopping, for 2 hours you allow to come back without any extra first ride charge. So such kind of software plus IT technology was well combined. And finally, the revenue redistribution system. Someone asked about, there are 70 companies. Why it's possible compared to Ratop, one company in Paris? That is, in my thinking, formally, the system is depending on each company's profit. The whole revenue was redistributed. But they changed the system, the basis. The basis is how many kilometre operated by each company. Okay? So what happened was that was a substantial improvement of former deregulation of a British city bus system. Okay? So in the case of Britain, I'm afraid I was living there, discouraged each company to take non-profitable route. Then in a sense, that destroyed the seamlessness. But to keep the seamlessness, redistribution of profit based on the total operation kilometer. So that was a very clever idea. Sorry, I talked too much.
No, thank you, Yoshi. Some comments about your comments.
Too many questions. Actually, 6 years ago, President of Korea Lee has done great job. Because of that, he became a president. Actually, we were so worried about the traffic congestion after demolishing some overbridge way, but there. As a result of demolishing the overbridge, there was no traffic problems, which means the traffic jam is so really bad in Seoul, the CBD area, which result in getting the traffic jam is getting worse. There's no car allowed anymore, which means if we get the maximum capacity of the roadway, and then after that, getting in at the peak point, then it going down, which is there was if there is no diverted route from there is no diverted route away from the traffic jam, and they don't people don't get the car getting into the CBD. That's the reason we don't have traffic problems with the Cheonggyecheon project. And the other one is about the bus company, 70 bus company. Why is 70 bus companies allowed in Seoul bus operation? Actually, it's not a good structure. Actually, Seoul Topis is the head of the bus operation pyramid. There was 70 company, and there is about 10,000 buses operating at the same time. If we cannot control all the 10,000 buses at the same time and in real time, and then we can control 70 bus company. They have the operator in each company, and then that's the reason we keep the company in about 70 level, which is different from in London. The other one is about IT, the problems. We have a strong basement in IT technology, and I'm going to, the harmonize IT with the transport. And then nowadays, I'm thinking, what is the, optimal way of providing the information to the citizen? I don't want people get the useless information, and then I want give the people the exact information they want, and then that's what I'm thinking about nowadays. And I think IT is not the old solution. I need to I need to classify and then modify and modify to get the adequate information to the people living in Seoul. And this is about Seoul bus information. And then now I'm going to provide better information in integrating all the transport mode movement, such as private passenger car and buses and subway and parking. And I'm going to give him the right to choose. And that's what I'm doing right now.
Thank you. Just a question about Korea. How many people have no cell phone in Korea? Everybody has a cell phone?
Yeah, everybody.
Everybody has a cell phone. And if I am, for instance, blind or if I am disabled?
Actually, that's it's a difficult problem to say, and we are not so good. We don't have a good service for the disabled person. And nowadays, I'm going to give him the service to the disabled persons, for using for the people using transit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just a question about the role of Cisco in Seoul. I don't know if you are able to answer, or Paul.
We've partnered in Korea for I don't know, at least 5 or 6 years, and we're very involved in a lot of the infrastructure development in the Seoul area and in that region. In particular, in Incheon, in a new city called Songdo, which is also a ubiquitous city. The notion there, it's actually a greenfield city that's being created by a developer called Gale, and what they're doing is they're creating this sustainable community from the outset, providing a new level of connectivity of transport infrastructure, of education infrastructure, government infrastructure, utility infrastructure, all in an integrated fashion, in a way that you've got sort of this common urban services platform, if you will. It's very dense development. It's actually quite neat. Now, what's going to be the challenge after that, based on our experience there, our collective experience, and I think it's been very good. We've co-developed some things like the personal travel assistant, which gives people modal choice based on the real-time traffic information that they get on how they plan travel, based on the most efficient, greenest mode if they choose, the cheapest way to travel. But what's interesting is that we're learning a lot of lessons there, I think, that can be applied toward the brownfield world, toward retrofitting existing cities and systems. But it's been an incredible experience, and I think it's a heck of a partnership.
Okay, thanks. Some questions remaining? No? Yes? One? Perhaps the last one?
Thank you. Ángel Aparicio from the Technical University of Madrid, Spain. My question to the panel would be how do you think we could expand this idea of seamless passenger travel to intercity modality, and not only to metropolitan and urban mobility. In fact, the fact is that a huge percentage of trips between cities beyond 300 kilometers even in Europe are made by private car. And the fact is that a large number of citizens live in medium or small-sized cities, which have not a huge transport hub like an airport or a high-speed train rail. So how could we move ahead that idea of seamless passenger traveling through public transport from a metropolitan or urban concept to an intercity concept. Thank you.
So, yes, Dominic, about the transfer from seamless to intercity transport?
Yeah, it's quite the same. We have two examples of things like that because we are now building a big line of rapid transport in South Africa, a new line, and it's exactly the same problem. It's a country where there is very weak public transport system. A new line is the occasion, opportunity to develop something like grasping together different, different means of transport. The second possibility, a second opportunity we are working next week on this thing, is about tourism. Because tourism in Paris, in France, we are a destination attractive for many people, and it's not only Paris. It's exactly the same thing. With tourism, we have the opportunity, we have the idea, the central idea, to grasp again together many actors, different actors who don't speak together before, because they have in common a problem, a real problem, how to help tourists to do what they want. So it's not. I don't answer to your question with a solution, a killer application, something which is a magic key for that. But I think that, like I said before, we need something to begin. An idea, something, a new line, which is the occasion to develop a new system around that. It's a seamless linking urban transport and regional or national transport. I don't think that's a good entry. The good entry is to change the mind, to go out of the box and to think with a new vision about that. But the problem we have now facing that is that we have not the engineers to do so. Because you have engineer for urban transport, you have engineer for regional or national train. So when I speak before about a new theory of innovation, it's not only saying that we need a new theory, it's saying that we need new competencies. It's not competencies of urbanists, it's competency of professional of transport. It's new competencies, new way for engineers to imagine different systems. So I can't give you a solution, but I can give you only, a platform. What platform? And in that, I see that Cisco and Google and what is done in Seoul and what we are doing in some ways could be part of the solution. But we need somewhere to discuss, to have the debates together. We haven't for the moment.
So the lesson is that we need a new expert panel to tackle this issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand that this is...
Excuse me. I was just going to follow up. This is a problem that we face in the United States in a lot of our urban areas because people have to travel long distances generally to get to their workplaces. So many of them use commuter rail, intercity trains to get to the urban areas from which they transfer to buses and to metro systems. So a lot of them, the solutions are the ones that we discussed here today. They're intermodal smart cards. You can use the same smart card. For instance, in the region that I come from, Washington, D.C., you can use the same smart card on your urban rail system, on your intercity system, as on your metropolitan bus or your rail system. It's passenger information systems, common passenger information systems. It's the planning around transportation, around high-density transportation, making sure that the rail connections go to the right places. And this is an issue that is going to be confronting us in a very big way soon in the United States because another of our big initiatives now is high-speed rail. We want to put in high-speed rail lines in several corridors in the U.S. So where are those high-speed corridors going to end up? We don't want people just to go from point A to point nowhere. We want them to go to some place where they can get to where they want to go effectively, hopefully by public transportation. So I think all of these solutions, all of these technical solutions, and these policy solutions, and these governments working together will get us there to this integrated, seamless intercity as well as urban transportation system.
Yes, Paul?
Just, thinking in terms of innovation here, I think one of the biggest innovative things that can happen is to really look at the transport system, whether it's passenger or freight, holistically, with all the modes involved, and really plan that way. Because there's nothing more frustrating than seeing a project on the board where, it may be a train station, it may be an Amtrak station, it may be whatever, where, the next step is to walk 15 blocks and sorry, but I just, I'm American, I'm lazy, I don't like to walk that far. Walk 15 blocks to go catch a bus that's going to take me to a train station. This really needs to be integrated. Or, for example, like I'm looking at the Dulles Rail situation, compare that to London where you've got the high-speed rail going into Paddington. What we're going to do is we're going to stop everywhere along the way, and if we really think we're going to make that an alternative to somebody jumping in a cab, I think we're misleading ourselves. And so it's got to be efficient. It's got to be effective. We need the data to really make informed decisions about the health and well-being of current operations, but also that data on when we plan future operations, how can we best serve the people? And sometimes I think we start to act like a bit of a self-licking ice cream cone, if you will, in this community where we think more about, maintaining the current system, our own internal operations, and think less about what does the public really want? What's that customer experience? What's that user experience of the transportation infrastructure or the shipping company or whoever it may be? How do we enhance their experience, give them the data they need to make informed decisions and make them happy about using the transport infrastructure?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it is clear that seamless transport is one point of view for users and one point of view for manager, and seamless management is not so simple. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to the panelists, and have a good coffee break.